Okay, hello students. Up till now, we have seen a monohybrid cross. Or a monohybrid cross is a cross in which the offsprings are produced by the cross of parents which are differing only in the one trait. And after doing a monohybrid cross, the Mendel derived two laws, that is law of dominance, in which he said that the alleles which are present in pair, if they are different, then the allele which is dominant, that will be expressed. That is law of dominance. According to the law of segregation, which is the second law which was concluded by Mendel after doing a monohybrid cross, that is that the alleles which are present in the pair, they always segregate or separate during the gamete formation, and because of which, if they are separating from each other, they are not mixing with each other, this has helped to get the other trait which was not expressed in the F1 generation. Okay, so these were the two laws which were derived by the Mendel after doing the monohybrid cross. Now in this video we are going to see how to identify the genotype by looking at the phenotype. So if you see, uh, if you have obtained a recessive trait, okay, if it is a short plant, then you can easily identify that the recessive trait is expressed only on a condition when the alleles which are present in pairs, they are the recessive only. So if it is a short plant which is observed from outside, then it must be having a genotypic composition as small t and small t. That means DOF and the DOF gene must be present in the allelic pair. But if you are getting like this, you are getting tall plants, but if you see the genetic composition over here is different than this, in spite of the fact that from outside the phenotype which is visible in these three plants, that is all tall, and even in the F1 generation which was obtained, that was also tall. So we are, from looking from outside, we are not able to identify what is the genotype of this tall plant or this tall plant. So this is what we are going to learn in this video, how to identify the genotype of a dominant trait, because recessive trait is well understood that the genotypic composition will be both the alleles which will be present, that will be DOF and DOF. So that is small t which is coding for DOFness, but we are not sure of the genotypic composition of the tall plant, which is a dominant character or which is a dominant phenotype. Okay, for that, what we have to do, we have to do a test cross. Okay, so what is a test cross? So test cross will help us to identify the genotypic composition of the dominant phenotype. Okay, and how we will be able to identify the genotype of the dominant phenotype, that is by doing a cross with the recessive trait. Okay, so here in this example, what is being shown, they have taken the character as flower color. So if purple color flower, which is a dominant trait, if that is expressed, okay, if that is expressed and it is visible from outside that the flower color is purple, that then there is a question that you can have either this genotype, or you can have either this genotype, and whether it can be a homozygous or it can be a heterozygous. So in order to find out about the genotypic composition of this particular dominant phenotype, we have to do a cross with a recessive parent. So if it is homozygous dominant, then the gametes which will be formed, that will be capital W and capital W. And for the recessive trait with which we are doing a cross, it is This is also homozygous. So it is small w and the small w, which is the gamete which will be formed. Okay. If you are doing a cross with a homozygous dominant, here you are able to see a Punnett square, and if you derive the genotypes of the offspring, then in that case you will be able to see that all the offsprings will be violet. Okay, but if in this case, if you are doing a cross, and if this purple flower with which we are doing a cross with a homozygous recessive parent, okay, then in that case what you will be able to see that the offsprings dominant trait and the recessive trait that is expressed in the ratio of 1:1. You are able to see if the purple flower has a genotypic composition as capital W and small w, that means one is purple and other is white. Okay, the purple will be expressed. So this is purple flower. So if it is a heterozygous condition and if we are doing it with a recessive parent, you will end up with equal ratio of dominant character and the recessive trait. Okay, so you have this purple flower and white flowers which will be obtained in the offspring after doing a cross with this homozygous recessive. And that is how you will conclude. If all flowers which are obtained are violet after doing a cross with a homozygous recessive parent, then you will identify the genotype as homozygous dominant. That means this purple flower was having both the alleles which were present in the pair were both were dominant. But if you have obtained after doing a cross with this flower with a recessive parent, if you are getting the dominant trait and the recessive trait in the ratio of 1:1, then or half of the flowers are violet or half of the flowers are white, in that case you can understand that this purple flower has genotypic composition of capital W and small w. That means it is heterozygous for the trait. Okay, so this is a test cross which will help you to identify the of the genotype of a dominant phenotype. Okay, by doing a cross with the homozygous recessive parent. So this is a test cross. Now, according to Mendel, whatever he has taken the 7 characters, when he did the same, the monohybrid cross, that is, first he went for cross fertilization, and after that he did self fertilization. Okay, so with all the 7 traits which were there, he did all the same type of experiment and he obtained the similar results. But when the experiments which were performed on the pea by the Mendel, when it were repeated using other traits in other plants, it was found that sometimes the F1 progeny, okay, the F1 progeny has a phenotype which was intermediate between the two parents, and that he called it as incomplete. This was due to the phenomena of incomplete dominance. That means whenever the allelic pairs are different, the one which was considered a dominant is not completely dominant over the other, and therefore an intermediate trait will be obtained by doing a cross fertilization. And the best example to show incomplete dominance is dog flower or snapdragon or antirrhinum species. Okay. Now, what exactly was done? Red color flowers. Okay. The cross was done exactly similarly as that of the Mendel. First, cross fertilization will be done, and then selfing will be done. Now, when cross fertilization was done with a homozygous uh, dragon flower with red flower was taken and a white flower homozygous for the trait was taken, and the F1 progeny which was obtained, it was neither red nor it was white. The color of the offspring was pink, that was intermediate between the red and white. Okay, even you are able to see in this picture that you have a red flower, somewhere it is pink and somewhere it is white flowers. Okay, so how was this obtained? If you check the Mendel experiment in F1 generation, the the dominant trait was expressed. For example, if we have seen monohybrid cross of a trait called height, then the dominant trait was tall. So in F1 generation, tallness was expressed. But in this case, what has happened, when red colored flower was crossed with a white color flower in the F1 generation, neither red nor white has come. It is pink color flowers which was produced, which was intermediate color between red and white. After that, after doing the self pollination means the gametes will be exactly the similar, that is capital R and small r. Here also capital R and small r. And if you see here, wherever there is a homozygous trait, if it is homozygous dominant, then red color flowers are obtained. Whenever there is a heterozygous condition, then pink color flowers are obtained. Whenever there is both the alleles which are present in the pair are recessive, then white color flowers are obtained. And like here in incomplete dominance, the genotypic ratio and the phenotypic ratio, they were exactly the same, and that was different from the Mendel. Genotypic ratio was 1 is to 2 is to 1. That is this type. This is one type, that is capital R, this is 1. Capital R, small r, this type is 2. And here it is smaller, this is 1. And if you check the color of the flower from outside, that is the phenotype, then the phenotypic ratio is, if you see a red color flower, that is 1, pink color flower, that is 2, and white color flower is 1. So 1 is to 2 is to 1. So in incomplete dominance, you have phenotypic and the genotypic ratio exactly the same. Okay, which was not in case of Mendel. In Mendel, the phenotypic ratio was 3 is to 1. That means 3 dominant character and 1 recessive character was expressed. But here, due to the formation of an intermediate trait, due to the incomplete dominance, the phenotypic and the genotypic ratio was exactly the same. That is 1 is to 2 is to 1. Okay. Now, in order to understand incomplete dominance, we will see what exactly could have happened. Okay, with the help of an example where we will take two alleles and one allele would be normal and another allele which is a modified allele. Okay, if you talk about the allele, they are just different forms of the gene of the single trait. Okay, so how can we say what is the concept of dominance? Why do we say that the alleles which are present whenever the alleles which are present in a heterozygous condition, they one of the alleles will be expressed with the one which is dominant it is expressed. What is the concept of dominance? So for example, uh, if suppose there is a E, which is denoting an enzyme. And you know the function of the enzyme, okay? The function of enzyme is to enhance the rate of a chemical reaction, okay? So suppose this capital E is one of the allele which is coding for an enzyme, which leads to the transformation of a substrate to a product. And there is another allele, that is small e, which is bit recessive. So now, what would be the condition if suppose this is the condition, this capital E is considered, okay, this capital E is considered as the normal allele, and this small e is considered as little bit modified allele. Okay, so what will happen if the allelic pairs is this? Okay, if this is the allelic pair, then it's quite obvious this is the normal allele, so it will lead to the transformation of substrate into a product. Okay, no problem. If this is the case, then there will be, if there are conditions for this allele, which is a modified allele. If this modified allele is producing a non-functional enzyme or no enzyme at all, so what will happen? Okay, if this small e, if this enzyme is capital E is expressed, then substrate will be converted into product with a faster speed. Okay, now if this E is producing a non-functional enzyme or no enzyme at all, in that case, only the enzyme which is produced by the expression of this capital E gene, that will lead to the transformation of substrate to the product. And in that case, when only this capital E is expressed, then we say that this capital E is totally dominant over small e. Okay, because this enzyme, this small e is defective, it is modified, and it is now not producing any of the enzyme. It is not producing a non-functional enzyme or no enzyme at all. So if this is not producing anything, so only this capital E will be expressed, and that is why we say when only this is expressed, we call this capital E as dominant. Okay, if it is producing this small e, which is the modified allele, it is producing more or less efficient enzyme. If it is producing a normal efficient enzyme, then there is no problem. Substrate will be converted into a product. But if it is producing less efficient enzyme, okay, then as compared to this one, the rate will be bit slower, but of course substrate will lead to the formation of product. In that case, what will happen? This capital E is not completely dominant over small e. Okay, so that is the concept of dominance, and that is what has happened in case of incomplete dominance, which is seen in snapdragon or dog flower, that here whenever both R's are present, capital R are present together, then this R is producing a product which is producing a red color. So red color is produced. Here, when both the recessive trait are there, then it is producing a white color, which is imparting a white color. So white color flower is produced. But in a case where capital R and small r are present together, in this case, what will happen? This capital R is producing a red color, and this small r is also uh, not very much dominant, but it is a variant of this capital R, and it is producing bit white color. So this red and both are expressed at the same time, but not completely. So what has happened? This red color got mixed with this white color, which is leading to the pink color, which is an intermediate color. So there was a blending of the expressions of the red gene and the white gene, because of which you have obtained a pink colored flower. So that is called as incomplete dominance. So Mendel, whatever Mendel said, he was believing in the concept of dominance, but when the experiments were conducted on other plants considering other traits, then they found that there was a deviation from the dominance, and intermediate trait can also be expressed. Now, the next concept is, now there was, yeah, now there were other variations also which was seen apart from Mendel's concept of law of dominance. According to the Mendel, what he said, that one allele or one gene is controlling only one trait. If capital T is controlling only tall character and small t is controlling only the dwarf character. But here there are examples where it was seen that a single gene, okay, that single gene can, the a product of a single gene may produce more than one effect. That means there is only one gene, like for example, yeah, for example, if you have capital B, this capital B is not only controlling the synthesis of a starch grain, but it is also controlling the size. Okay. If both if both the alleles are homozygous, capital B, then you will have uh, big sized starch grains would be produced. If it is small b homozygote, then wrinkled starch grains would be, synthesis of a starch grain will be there, but it will be, the size of the starch grain would be wrinkled. Okay, and since it is wrinkled, it is of small size will be produced. In a case where capital B and small b, a heterozygous condition exists, that in that case round starch grains are produced. Round starch grains, if you see, it is produced by B. It is controlled by B, but the size is not big. The size is not big, the size is intermediate size. So although capital B was actually controlling the size and it was producing big size and more synthesis of starch was there. And in heterozygous condition, it could produce a starch grain, but the size of the starch grain that was intermediate. Okay, so if we consider starch grain size as a phenotype, then the alleles, this capital B was not completely dominant over this small b, because intermediate size starch grain was produced. So here also it was seen that it was, first thing, that one gene was controlling two characters, that is the synthesis of the starch and the size and shape of size of the starch grain. And if we just consider the grain size, then capital B gene was not completely dominant over the small b, because of which an intermediate size starch grain was produced, which was also showing incomplete dominance again. Now, now, now we will see the concept of codominance and multiple allelism. Apart from the Mendel's dominancy, there was it was also seen that the alleles which are present in the pairs, they both can be dominant and they can be expressed at the same time. Okay, so that is called as codominance. Okay, when both the alleles are not both are dominant. Okay, so both will be expressed at the same time. So that is called as at the same time both are dominant, co-dominance. Okay, and this co-dominance phenomena will be easily seen in avio blood grouping. If these are the alleles which are present in an offspring, that is IA and IA, and this IA is obtained from parent 1 and this IA is obtained from parent 2, and if these two gametes fuse, the offspring will receive IA and IA. In that case, the blood group the blood group will be of A type. Why we are using I? Because ABO, our blood group, is controlled by a gene which is called as I. Okay, and this I actually controls the different glycoproteins which are present on the surface of red blood cell. Okay, so we have three alleles in human ABO blood grouping. We have IA gene, we have uh, IB gene, and we have a small I gene. Okay, so if this allele is expressed, okay, if this allele is expressed, then it will produce a type of glycoprotein on the surface of red blood cell. Okay. If this IB gene is present, then the on red blood cell, this gene will actually code for a glycoprotein, that is B. Okay, so B type of a glycoprotein will be present on the surface of red blood cell. And if a small I is there, then this is there will be no glycoprotein which will be expressed on the surface of red blood cell. Okay, so out of, since we are a diploid organism, so out of these three alleles which is existing in the population of humans, okay, so these three out of these three allele, a human can possess on out of these three, each human can possess, each individual can possess only two. Either it can possess these two, or it can possess these two, or it can possess IA and a small I, like this. Okay, so our offspring can inherit only two of these alleles. So if you see, this is what is called as multiple allelism. Multiple alleles means many alleles. So if you see, there are for a particular trait, that means for coding of a blood group, there is not only two alleles, but there are three alleles which are present. So more than two alleles are present within the population. You can't check it in a population individual. If you are checking many individuals within the population, then you will come across all these three alleles. Okay, so as I told you that in a diploid organism, each offspring can have only, out of these three, it can have only two of the alleles. Okay, likewise, you are able to see here, you have IA and IA. Okay, and one more thing before we start with this and how the blood grouping is done. This gene, IA gene and IB gene, both are dominant alleles. So if both are coming together, then both will be expressed, and red blood cells will have A glycoprotein and B glycoprotein both on its red blood surface. But this IA, if IA is present with a small I, or IB is present with a small I, then in that case, IA is dominant over small I, and IB is also dominant over small I. In that case, only this allele will be expressed. So type of a type of a glycoprotein will be expressed on the surface of red blood cell. If IB and small I is present together, then in that case, IB is dominant over this one. Okay, so in that case, the blood group will be B, and B will be expressed on the surface of red blood cell. So let us see the combination, what various combinations can be there. If you have both IA and IA, so A will be expressed. Okay, the blood group will be A. If the alleles which are present, they are IA and IB, which is there, then since both IA and IB alleles are both are equally dominant, so in that case the blood group will be AB. Okay, if IA and small I is present in an offspring, then the IA allele is dominant over small I, and therefore the blood group will be A. Again, if there is IA and IB, the blood group will be A. If you have B and B, so of course B will be expressed. Here in this case, when there is a heterozygous condition, IB is dominant over small I, so the blood group will be B. Here you have small I and small I, both the recessive traits are present together. In this case, none of the glycoproteins will be expressed on the surface of red blood cells, and therefore the blood group is O. Now, where is codominance? So, in rest of them, law of dominance is applicable, but in cases like this one and the case of this one, if you see, both the allele, that is IA and IB, are equally dominant, and therefore both the traits are expressed, and this phenomena is called codominance, which is different from the concept of dominance. I hope you are understanding. Now we will start with uh, now we will start with a dihybrid cross. Up till now, we have seen a monohybrid cross. We have seen with that monohybrid cross, law of dominance was derived, law of segregation was derived, and we have seen the variations from the law of dominance, that is incomplete dominance, and codominance also exist if the experiments are carried out on different plants or animals. Okay. Now we will start with a dihybrid cross. Mendel did a dihybrid cross. Now he considered two traits at a time. Okay, and with this dihybrid cross, he derived one more law, that is called as law of independent assortment. Okay, so let us first see what was the dihybrid cross. Dihybrid cross means, in this cross, two traits will be taken at a time. So here the two traits which are taken is seed. Okay. The two traits which are taken is seed shape. Okay. And for which there were two alleles which were present. Capital R for round. Okay. And a small r for wrinkled shape. Then you had second trait which he has taken, that was seed color. Okay, that was seed color, and yellow was a dominant trait, so it is capital Y for yellow, and small y was for green. Okay, green color trait, which was recessive, so that's why I have written in small letters. Okay, the same way the experiment was carried out. First, he has taken a homozygous true breeding plants, but they were differing only in the two traits, that was seed shape and seed color. So here, yellow and round shape seeds. Okay, yellow and round seeds were taken. It was not that yellow and round seeds were taken. It was the plants which were taken which were producing a yellow and round seeds. And another plant was taken which was producing, which was homozygous for green and wrinkled. Okay, they were true breeding and they were differing only in these two characters, and that is why they are homozygous for the traits. So here if yellow and round, so it is homozygous, capital Y, capital I for the first trait, and capital R and capital R for the seed shape. Again, the second trait, if you see, if you second parent, the two traits which were taken, that was small y for the first trait, that is for the color of the seed, and second trait which was taken, that was for seed shape, that is small r, which is coding for wrinkled. Okay, after doing a cross, he got all yellow and round seeds. Okay, heterozygous condition as that in the monohybrid cross. Here also in a dihybrid cross, you will get a heterozygous condition for each trait. Okay, like we have started in the monohybrid cross, if there was only one trait like this, capital Y and small y, then in the F1 offspring, capital Y and small I will be there in the offspring for the first trait, And for the second trait also, in the gametes, since capital R and capital R will segregate according to the law of segregation, and small r, they will segregate in the gamete formation. Capital R will join with a small r in the offspring. So for the second trait, you have capital R and small r. And if you check the phenotype of this, according to the laws, so you have, if you check this, so capital Y and small y. So this gene, capital Y gene, will be expressed because this is dominant. So this is yellow. Okay. And out of these two, this is heterozygous condition. So according to the law of dominance, the one which is dominant, which will be expressed. So this is round, which you are able to see. So if yellow and round seeds are produced in the F1 generation, that means these traits are dominant traits. That means yellow and round are the dominant traits. Now after that, he did selfing. He took the plant which was obtained in the F1 generation, and he did selfing. Now for the production of the gametes, okay, how the gametes will be formed. Here he told one, uh, he derived a law for that. Later we will discuss. But after doing selfing, okay, he obtained the phenotypic ratio as 9 yellow round, 3 green round, 3 yellow and wrinkled, and 1 green and wrinkled. Okay, so this was the phenotypic ratio which he obtained. The genotypic ratio was 1 is to 4 is to 1 is to 1 is to 1 is to 2 is to 2 is to 2 is to 1. What is genotype? This is one type of a genotype. This is another type of a genotype. This is another type of a genotype. Then again, this is another type of a genotype. So there are so many varied. So this is 1 is to 1 is to 1. If exactly same type is obtained, then we will write as 2. So if you see this, 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 okay, and this one. So they are 4. So this 4 is for that one. Okay. So you have different types of genotypes which will be obtained. Now, I have told you how to draw the Punnett square. Okay, how many squares you have to draw in this condition when there is a dihybrid cross. So how many alleles are there in a dihybrid cross? Every time you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are 4 alleles while doing a dihybrid cross. Whether you consider this parent, you have 4 alleles present over there in total. So what you have to do, you have to make a 4 cross 4 square. It is a square, so it has to be equal from all the sides. So we have to make a square 4 into 4. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and this side also 1, 2, 3, 4. So you are making 4 cross 4 square, that is 16 squares have to be made. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 into 4 is 16. 16 squares you have to make for the Punnett square. Now we have to also check how many gametes we have to form from this. So for that, the formula is 2 to the power of n for the different types of gametes which have to be formed. And n is nothing but number of, that is that is number of heterozygote. Number of heterozygote. How we will see that heterozygote? So that heterozygote, what we will see, if you see the first trait, this is heterozygous condition. So this is 1. If you check the second trait, this is also heterozygous condition. So this becomes 2. So there in this one, you have 2 heterozygous conditions. So the type of the different types of gametes which will be formed, that is 2 to the power of 2, that is total 4. So 4 different types of gametes can be formed in this case. And I have already told you how to make the gametes, that how you will make the gametes, that the alleles which are present in pairs, they have to move into 2 different gametes. So this capital Y and this small y, it will move to different gametes. Now, these capital R and small r, they have equal opportunity to either go with this one or it can go with this one. So if it goes with this one, because from every trait we have to get one allele in a gamete, because both the traits will come into the gamete also. But in that case, in the gamete, you will have only one of the alleles. You will have only one gene. The gamete should have only one gene for every trait, and that is what we are doing. But here in this case, there is a concept that um, the if the second trait is in heterozygous condition, so both have the equal opportunity to move with either or combine with either of these two alleles which are present for the first trait. So this capital R can go with capital Y also and small y also. So you have written like this. And this small r also has an equal opportunity to go with capital Y or small y. So you have capital Y, small r, and small y and small r. Okay, and I have already told you that how many different types of gametes can be formed. So there are 4. So we are able to make 4 type of gamete, different types of gametes. So we have capital Y small r, we have small y capital R, we have capital Y small r, and small y small r. So what you are able to see, in every gamete you have one one allele from each trait. Okay, and in gamete you should at least have one gene for every trait. So you are having in this, if this is a one gametic cell, you are having from the traits, that is seed color, you have capital Y gene, and for the shape you have capital R gene. If this is the second gametic cell, then again from uh, both the traits, the gene should come, but the gene should be only one from each trait. It should not be two like in the offspring or in the parent. So this is a small y and this is capital R. Here again you have capital Y, you have a small r, and that is what you are able to see over here. Capital Y is capital R, then you have capital Y small r, you have small y capital R, and you have small y small r. So these are the gametes which are formed from heterozygous parent, and again you have the gametes from, because it is self-pollination, self-fertilization, so same type of a gametes will be formed. You just have to combine uh, for producing the genotypes of the offspring. You just have to combine the above 2 gametes of the parents, and you have to make the genotypic composition. So this is what is done. If you see capital Y, capital Y, capital R, capital R. So this is the genotypic composition of this offspring. Likewise, if you check this one, so you have to combine this, and you have to, since it is present in the first one, so you have to combine these two. So you have capital Y, small y, and you have capital R and capital R. For this box, you have to combine this one, and if you have to combine again this one. So if you're combining, this is capital Y, this is capital Y, this is capital R, and this is small r. So this is what is the genotypic composition of the offspring. Likewise, if you check this one, so for this one, it is this one because it is in the third box. Here also from the third place, you will copy this. So you will combine these two and you will write the genotypic composition. Okay, so this is what is the genotypic composition which you are able to see. Different types of genotypic composition. Now, based on the genotypic composition, now we have to write the phenotype. Okay, so if we are writing the phenotype, now let's write the phenotype. So if you see, For the first state, these are the two genes which present. So both are homozygous. So capital Y will be expressed. So this is yellow. As you are able to see, this is yellow. Here you are able to see the two genes for the shape of the seed, that is both are homozygous dominant. So capital R will be expressed. So seed is round. Okay. Now let us see this one. If for the first trait, these two are the genes, both are recessive. So green trait, small y will be expressed, that is coding for green color. And then you for the second trait, the two genes which are available in the offspring, that is both are homozygous dominant. So you have a round shape seed. Then if you check this one, here what you are able to see, this is a heterozygous condition and capital Y is dominant over small y. So capital Y will be expressed. So the color of the seed is yellow. And here you are able to see that capital R and small r are present together. This is heterozygous condition. So again, capital R is dominant over small r. And therefore capital R will be expressed, that is round will be expressed. So this seed is round. Okay, so this is what is obtained after dihybrid cross. After doing a dihybrid cross, that means after considering two traits at a time, what he saw that the dominant traits were expressed in the F1 generation, and in the F2 generation, after doing the self-pollination, the dominant traits and the recessive traits were expressed in the ratio of 9:3, 3:1. Okay, and from this observation, okay, from this observation, he derived one more law, which is called as law of independent assortment. Let us see what does law of independent assortment say. Okay, why this particular ratio is obtained. Now, if you see, from that dihybrid cross, he derived third law, which is law of independent assortment. What does this law state? This law states that when two pairs of traits are combined in a hybrid, two pairs of traits, okay, two pairs of traits are combined in a hybrid. What two traits are combined in a hybrid? These two traits are combined in a hybrid, that is capital Y and small I. This is one trait. This is the second trait. Okay, when they are combining in a hybrid, this is hybrid, this is also hybrid. Okay, they are not homozygous, they are heterozygous, and heterozygous is also called as hybrid. So whenever the two traits are combining in a hybrid, then segregation of one pair of character is independent of the other pair of characters. Segregation or separation of these two alleles is independent of the segregation of these two alleles which are of the second pair. This is law of independent assortment. And if these alleles are independent of the separation of the alleles of these two pairs, then in that case you will end up with this ratio 9:3:3:1. If they are not segregating, if yellow is always combined with this capital R and it is not getting removed, if then in that case what will happen, you will not end up with this ratio. If you see, this law of independent assortment, this holds good for the alleles which are present on a homologous pair of chromosomes. So you have this homologous pair of chromosome. Okay, if suppose here we have capital I and the allelic pairs, okay, allelic pairs for one trait is always present on a homologous pair of chromosome. So this small y will go to this pair, okay, the paired homologous chromosome. Now second trait, if this capital R is, this is a bit hazy, so I'll just draw one more. Let's see this. This. So you have this and you have, these are homologous pair of chromosomes. Okay. and the allelic pairs for each trait, they are present on homologous pair of chromosome. So for the first trait, this allele and a second pair of allele, the allele which is there, that will be present on the homologous pair of chromosome. Likewise, if you have the second trait like this, you will have capital R on this chromosome and a small r on this chromosome. So first pairing take place, and for the formation of gametes, what will happen? What will happen? These two paired chromosomes, they will separate, and if these two will separate in a different gametic cell, okay, because each gamete has to receive only one of the alleles of a trait. So what will happen? This will have capital Y, and the second, for the second trait, it has the gene capital R, small y, and this is small r. Okay, as I have told you that in the gamete, for one trait, only one gene, gamete will receive only one gene. Likewise, if you are able to see, for the first trait, it has received capital Y. For the second trait, it has received capital R gene. This gametic cell, it has received small y, and this has received small r as the second trait, from the second trait. Okay, so now this has become half, and these chromosomes have moved to different gametes. Now there is one more possibility. So you have gametes. So we are just writing like this. So this is clear. Capital Y R and small y small r. This is clear. Then how does these two gametes appear? These two gametes appear because after pairing of the homologous chromosome, there are chances of crossing over. If crossing over has occurred, in that case, what will happen? After crossing over, after first pairing of homologous chromosome, this is followed by crossing over. So suppose small y come to this place, okay, capital R remain at this place, and capital Y goes to this place, okay. In crossing over, what will happen? A part of a chromosome will move to this place, taking away the genes. So small capital Y will come to this place, and small y portion of the chromosome will move to this place. So what will happen? Both will be exchanged. So in that case, after the crossing over has been done, now again the gametes will be formed. In this case, what will happen? Now what you have is small y and capital R. So you have a small y and capital R which has come, and in another gamete you will get capital Y and small r. So this is how the different types of gametes are formed. And if in this manner, okay, gametes are formed, then you will end up in a dihybrid cross. You will get the ratio as 9:3:3:1. Okay, so this is what is law of independent assortment. That is said that the let us see once again what does law of independent assortment say. Okay, what does law of independent assortment say? Law of independent assortment say when the two pairs of traits are combined in a hybrid, okay, segregation of one pair of characters is independent of other pair of characters. So two pairs of traits, when they are combined in a hybrid, if the alleles which are present for the first trait is hybrid and the second trait is also hybrid and they are combined together, then in that case the gametes will have equal ratio. That means the the alleles of the second trait will get equal opportunity to move with either of the alleles. So they will have to separate from each other, and thus there can be formation of four gametes. And if there are formation of four gametes, then in that case the ratio will be 9:3:3:1. Okay, so they are assorting themselves. One trait is assorting independently of the alleles of the second trait. That is what is law of independent assortment. Law of segregation is just separation of the alleles of one trait. So when capital Y and small y segregate, this is law of segregation. When capital R and small r segregate, this is law of segregation. But when yellow with yellow round comes, or with yellow wrinkled feet come, then this is segregation or separation of the two traits. Okay, so that is what is law of independent assortment. Now, after he did all these experiments with monohybrid cross and the dihybrid cross, he published, he also, I have told you in the previous slide that he also published his work. But in spite of that, Mendel's work was not in the limelight. It was because of till 16 years after his death, his work was, after 16 years, his work came into limelight. Okay. It was, it was three scientists in 1900 that Mendel's work was rediscovered by three scientists independently. The first was Hugo de Vries from Holland, Franz Correns in Germany. He was Franz Correns in Germany. And the third one is Erich Teschermark in Austria. So he was Erich Teschermark in Austria, who rediscovered Mendel's work. So after he has published, after his death, after 16 years after his death, his work was rediscovered by these three scientists, and then Mendel was regarded as the father of classic genetics. So he was regarded that he was the first person who started the study of genetics, that is heredity and variation, after 16 years after his death, when these people have rediscovered his work. Now, if you see the history of genetics, okay, in 1865, Gregor Mendel presented his results and 10 years of, based on the 10 years of experimentation on pea plant. Later in 1800s, there was increased research in the microscopy and the chromosome was discovered. Okay, and in 1903, chromosomes in the gametic cells was found to be involved in the reproductive cycle. So meiosis was discovered, and the process of meiosis was discovered with the advancement in the microscopy. The Mendel work, if you see the Mendel work, he actually crossbred many pea plant, and he has sown the seed, and then he grew the plants, and he calculated the number, how many different types of phenotypic uh, observation. He took so many phenotypic observations. He calculated the number, gave a statistical analysis to it. But and after doing the experiments, he derived these laws based on the fact that there are, he said that there is something, there is factors which are called as factors which are transmitted from parents to the offspring and in subsequent generations. But there was no physical proof. There was, since chromosome was not discovered at that time, so there was no physical location of those factors which was said by Mendel as factors. Okay. Now, then came chromosomal theory of inheritance. Mendel completed his results in 1866. American genetics Carl Correns rediscovered Mendel's work in 1900 and suggested central role of chromosome in heredity. As I told you that Mendel, based on his observation, he concluded that the factors are steadily being transmitted from parents to the offspring, and these factors are responsible for the trait which is being expressed in the offspring. Later on, Carl Collins said that chromosomes are the unit of inheritance. Okay, when the chromosomes are passing from the gametes, and from the gametes when they are passing on to the offspring, then the traits are expressed. So he indicated the role of chromosome in the heredity. Then later on, W.S. Sutton of USA and Theodore Boveri of Germany suggested independently that the chromosome were the carrier of Mendel's heredity factors, that is called as chromosomal theory of inheritance. Later, these two scientists, that is Sutton and Boveri, they suggested that the factors which was called by Mendel, they are actually, these chromosomes are the carrier of those factors. Those factors are actually located on the chromosome, and together they are performing the same function. The function remains the same. That what Mendel was telling, that the factors uh, are discrete, they are distinct, they are not getting mixed, they are being transferred stably from the parents to the offspring. Likewise, the chromosomes are also being transferred in the same manner as the those factors which were described by Mendel. So what Sutton and Boveri said, that these chromosomes are the carrier of those factors. The factors are present on the chromosome. That was said by Sutton and Boveri. And based on his concept, based on his suggestion, their chromosomal theory of inheritance came into being. What were, according to the theory of, according to chromosomal theory, what is chromosomal theory of inheritance? What are the features of chromosomal theory of inheritance? Let's see. Okay. So, according to chromosomal theory of inheritance, genes or those factors, uh, now it is called as gene, but that time Mendel called it as factors. So according to them, the genes are located at specific locations on the chromosomes. Homologous chromosomes separate during meiosis. Fertilization restores the chromosome number to the diploid conditions. The chromosomes segregate as well as assort independently. So Mendel also said the same thing, that the factors or the genes, okay, he did not tell the location where was it present. So these were the one who suggested that the genes are actually present on the chromosome, and they are the allelic pairs are present on the homologous pair of chromosomes. They separate during the meiosis, and then fertilization will restore the chromosome number, and also the two alleles which were for a particular trait, that will also be restored in the diploid condition. Okay, the chromosomes segregate as well as assort themselves independently. Okay, so that was chromosomal theory of inheritance. Now, they just suggested these concepts. An experimental proof for the chromosomal theory of inheritance was done by Thomas Hunt Morgan and his colleague. Okay, so experimental, for every concept, if you are giving any concept, you have to prove it with the help of an experiment. Okay, so that was done by Thomas Hunt Morgan. He was working on tiny fruit flies. Scientific name is Drosophila melanogaster. Okay, so what were the characteristics why he chose fruit fly as an experimental model to prove chromosomal theory of inheritance? So that are the features. First, it is suitable for the genetic studies. This was the most suitable for the genetic studies. Secondly, they were easily grown on a simple synthetic media in the laboratory. If you are able to see, this is the medium in which the fruit flies will be given the food and they will multiply. So grown on simple synthetic media in the laboratory. The third is they complete their life cycle in about 2 weeks. So whatever experiments that is completed within the 2 weeks. If life cycle is short, then it will be completed within a short span of time and he will be able to see the results. Single mating could produce large number of progeny flies. Okay, with single mating or with a single mate or only, when it is able to produce so many flies. So large sampling data will going to provide credibility to the results. Okay, clear differentiation of male and female flies were there. You Many types of hereditary variations can be seen with low power microscope. So whatever variations he wanted to see, that was easily observed under low power microscope. There was no high tech microscope which was required. Only on low power microscope he was able to interpret or see the results. Okay. So now we will see what is the basic difference between male and female fruit fly. Okay. So if you see, this is the male fruit fly and this is the female fruit fly. Okay. if you see, there are two black bands which are present in the forelegs of the males only, which is absent in case of the females. Males are smaller in size, females are larger in size. If you see the male fruit fly, they have black bands, black spots which are present on the wings. But if you see this female, this is absent, black spots are not present. Then you have a large serrated ovipositor which is present in the females. Large serrated means like like this. Serrated is like this shape. This is serrated. So this is serrated like this. You can see this this type of a structure is called serrated. So ovipositor means the place where the eggs will be deposited. Okay. So this ovipositor is present only in the females. Okay. Now he worked on the genes which were present on the sex chromosomes. Okay. And he did the same experiment which was done on the Mendel, but he took the genes which were present on the sex chromosome, and that is why, and then he did sexual reproduction by mating these two, male and female. Okay. The experiment what he did, that we will study in the next video. Okay, what crosses he did and what was his conclusion in that, in order to prove chromosomal theory of inheritance, what was the major conclusion, how did he come across about linkage and recombination concept, that also we have to study after this. So in next video we will cover the experiment which was carried out by Thomas Hunt Morgan in order to prove chromosomal theory of inheritance. Thank you.